Hello and welcome to Facility Grid webinar, 5 Critical Steps for Job Site Productivity. Thank you for joining us. In today's webinar, I will share my favorite steps for making the most of the time commissioning professionals spend on the job site. First, a couple of words about myself. My name is Alex Kozinets and I'm a Chief Product Officer at Facility Grid. I'm leading up product strategy and customer success and conducting the educational programming and webinars. My background is in mechanical engineering, construction administration, and commissioning. And I have personally used Facility Grid on various commissioning projects throughout my career. So as a former commissioning professional, my role is to help Facility Grid be even more focused on its customers and their needs. Now let's get to the webinar you came for. In today's webinar, we will review the following: synchronizing mobile device with the cloud, uploading latest project documents, enabling multi-checklist completion, marking up PDFs with observations and issues, and getting ready for functional testing. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, my background is very wide. I used to wear many different hats. I used to design mechanical systems for various buildings. I used to represent engineering teams and building owners during construction administration phase of the projects. And I also used to oversee commissioning activities and leading commissioning teams. So what I'm going to talk about today will be based on my personal experience and the knowledge I've accumulated throughout my career. So there are many different things you can think of to make sure that your time spent on the job site is productive. And as I go over these steps, some of them, may seem more obvious than others, but still they all come from my experience. These are most of them mistakes that I've made before getting to the job site. And so this is something that I've learned and I would like to share with you. So what's the first step? Well, the first step is make sure your mobile device is synchronized with the cloud. Why is it important? It's important so when you get to the job site, you're ready to go right away. You do not want to arrive at the job site thinking, oh, I forgot to download my mobile app, or I forgot to synchronize with the cloud. Why? Because maybe there is no Wi-Fi connection on the job site, and so maybe you have connection to the cellular network, but downloading a project, which could be huge, with a lot of documents and pictures, downloading it over cellular network may take time. What you want to do is make sure that your project is downloaded and synchronized while you still have good Wi-Fi connection. So obviously the first step is to download the mobile app on your device. Now you may be using several devices on the project. You may be planning on using your mobile device, but you also may be using your laptop to conduct some functional tests. And if there are no internet connection, there's no Wi-Fi on the job site, you want to make sure that you have your app installed even on your laptop so that you can work offline on your laptop, and then when you have the connection with internet, when you have Wi-Fi connection, to synchronize it back with the cloud. So make sure you download the app. Second, make sure you synchronize your project. Make sure you download the project and synchronize it. Make sure you have all your projects downloaded. So for example, you may be working on a project with different buildings, and every single building is maybe entered as a separate project. And you may be planning on spending a morning on one building and an afternoon in the other building. So make sure that both of these buildings are synchronized on your mobile device so that you can simply enjoy lunch between visiting two projects without thinking that you need to find a Wi-Fi spot and synchronize your device. And once you get to the other side, you simply select another project on your device and you're ready to go. And also multiple devices. Again, as I mentioned before, you may be doing different activities on the job site. You may be just walking on site and documenting your issues and observations, and it's very easy to do with your smartphone device or maybe with a tablet. And then as you're maybe getting into performing functional tests and you're planning on doing it on your laptop or on your tablet. So you want to make sure that all the devices that you're planning on using that day have the latest version of all information, and you're ready to go. Next step is to have all the references handy. I don't know about you guys, but my personal experiences, you get to the job site, you're looking at something, you're looking at drawings, you're looking at specs, and what you're seeing on the job sites doesn't match necessarily what's documented on drawings and specifications, or installation details are not correct. Well, that may simply be the case of you not having the latest set of documents. Before you go to the job site, make sure you have all the latest information. Make sure when you're looking at that piping detail for a coil, you have the latest information. Make sure that any RFIs that have been asked related to that installation, you have the data in front of you. Make sure you're not creating unnecessary comments, unnecessary issues on something that is installed correctly. The more issues you create on something that is based on you not having the latest information is going to give you less credibility, right? So again, make sure you have all the latest documents on your device installed and ready. Control submittal. This is a very sore subject. As you know, commissioning most of the time looks at the control submittal when they do the functional testing and making sure the systems operate exactly as they were intended by the engineer of record. So that control submittal may have been resubmitted several times. So make sure that when you're looking at that control submittal, you always have the latest version in front of you, right? Because not having the latest version can mean that you fail a test because for some reason it's not matching the procedure that you've documented in the functional test. And apparently this is just because you did not see the latest RFI that addressed that issue. Now I have one question here. Does Facility Grid interface with Procore when clients keep their update drawings? We also upload submittals such as to Procore. We do not interface with Procore directly, but what we do have is ability to export data out of Facility Grid in Excel format, for example, that are consumed by any construction management tool like Procore, for example. So what we recommend is when the commissioning providers review equipment submittals, for example, or control submittal, they simply download or upload that document into Facility Grid and provide their comments on those submittals directly from Facility Grid. And obviously, systems like Procore or BIM 360 or eBuilder, they have a very extensive structure of documents. So even if there was a way to interface and grab the data, depending on how the folders are set up in those platforms, sometimes it could be difficult to get to the right place or to the right document. Okay, what's the next tip? So the next one is enable multi-checklist completion. The most important function of a commissioning provider is to make sure that the systems and equipment installed as required by the construction documents, by the owner requirements, and by the standard engineering practices. Also, it is very important then to make sure that that equipment and the systems perform as intended by the engineer of record. Also, it is important to document that all those steps took place so that the equipment got delivered and without any damage. It is important to make sure that the equipment got piped, wired, and ducted as required by those construction documents. And it's also very important to make sure that it has been started up by the requirements specified by the manufacturer, right? Then it is also important to make sure that all the documentation, the warranty information, has been provided by the construction team to the owner. Now, this is pretty much the functionality or responsibility of commissioning providers. Why do we want to use a commissioning software? The commissioning software we want to use to enable you to perform all these tasks with minimal effort. We want to make sure that you do not waste time filling out a checklist for 100 VAV boxes, that you open every single checklist for VAV box one at a time and answering the question, have you provided a submittal? Have you provided warranty information? Because most of the time you're going to provide it based on the equipment type. You're going to provide one warranty information, a document for all VAV boxes. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure that your team does not waste time on documenting information, but we want to make sure that your team actually documents it. So basically, to achieve that, we want to provide a possibility for commissioning providers, for contractors to document that information, not one by one, but for a group of equipment. So for example, if we are filling out checklists for some terminal equipment, VV boxes, or maybe some DX units, we want to provide the ability to have several of them on the same screen, right? So that you can answer questions like, has the warranty information been provided? Has the startup documentation been provided? We want to make sure that that has been accomplished, but documentation of that functionality can be simplified, can be made easier. And so what we want to make sure is that that functionality is activated, meaning that the checklist can be several or multiple checklists can be completed at one time. And also we want to make sure that all the equipment instances are linked to the equipment type. So for example, if we are completing checklists for 100 VV boxes, we want to make sure that they're all linked to one equipment type or equipment family, as it is done in Revit. And in that case, it would make easier for everyone to document information. Again, in summary, we want to make sure that everything is documented properly, but we also want to make sure that the process of documentation is as straightforward, is simple, is as efficient as possible. The next step is marking up PDFs with observations and issues. Now, when you go to the job site and you review installation, you conduct functional tests, you do some walkthroughs, you may be looking at performing above ceiling inspections or static pressure testing. What we do not want you to do is to mark up something on the floor plan or on a flow diagram, and then going back to your office and downloading your comments and then documenting them in the issues log or in the punch list. What we want to do is to make sure that the time you spent in the first place recording your notes and observations, marking up PDFs, then those comments can be simply transferred automatically into an observation report or an issues log. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure that your device, your mobile device that you plan on using on the job site, have a third-party PDF markup app installed. So this could be, there's tons of them. There's iAnnotate, there's a Bluebeam. We want to make sure that you have those installed on your device so that you can use them on the job site to mark up the documents. And then when you actually walk in the site and let's say you're documenting a ripped insulation or missing a support for a ductwork. It is very hard to document it somewhere and then make sure that it is easy for the contractor to address the issue if they don't know exactly where the issue is. So when you're documenting something simple, like for example, you're looking at an air handling unit or a pump, and let's say either of those equipment is missing a vibration isolation, you can reference that issue or observation to the asset, and then anyone who is responsible to address the issue, they can easily locate it, right? Because you're associating it with a particular asset. But if you're creating an issue of missing a chain on a valve in a mechanical room, it is very hard to communicate exactly which valve you're talking about. So what we recommend is make sure you make your comments on the flow diagrams, on the flow plans, and then have those comments transferred into the issues logs, into the observation reports, and then create links to where those issues are. So when somebody is assigned to the issue that you've created, and needs to figure out where that valve is, where you found a chain is missing, they can simply go to that PDF, find where the valve is, and fix the problem. Now we're moving to my favorite steps. So this one has to do with the functional testing. And I'm probably speaking for every commissioning professional that has performed functional testing and encountered the same problem. And the problem is getting to the job site to perform functional testing and finding that the system or that equipment is not ready for the testing, or going through those functional performance testing steps or script and finding that the system is not set up, is not programmed to function as it was intended by the specifying engineer. Why does it happen? So again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, I used to wear several hats: design engineer, construction administration provider, and the commissioning engineer. And every single step of the process can introduce a breakdown in that process. How can it happen? Very easily. Let's talk about the design process. So typically, you have a design engineer specifying a system, specifying equipment, and then writing the sequence of operation for that piece of equipment or that system that is specifically tailored to that system on the project. Sometimes, however, the engineers do not do a good job. Engineers copy the sequence of operation from the previous project to the next project. So you'd see air-cooled chiller on one project, on your new project, and you go back to the project you've done previously, and there was also an air-cooled chiller, so you know what type of system that is. You just copy and paste that sequence without even reading it, without realizing that maybe half of that sequence doesn't even apply to your project. Why? Because you may not even have the same type of equipment. You may not even have the same type of system. But sometimes, again, that is not verified, and you end up with a control sequences that is not tailored to the project. Also, during the construction phase, during the submittal review process, when contractors submit the submittals for review, and that has to do with control submittal, how is it typically put together? Whoever puts together the control submittal typically just copies and pastes the sequence of operation from the design documents. Why is it done? Well, because the person who puts together that submittal is not the person who is going to be actually programming that sequence of operation. So basically, the controls contractor just acknowledges that whatever the engineer asked for will be done when the building automation system is programmed. So the submittal is issued, obviously, because it matches the design documents, it gets approved. And then what happens? A year later, when you actually get a programmer to write that controls sequence operation, that person realizes that, wait a second, this is not how the systems is or equipment is intended to perform on this particular project. Why? Well, because you don't even have that equipment. You have a different equipment. You have a different system. You have different set points. You have different application. So what happens is the controls contractor would just go ahead and program the system the way it's supposed to be programmed. Maybe he's done or she's done work for the same client for many years, and that person knows exactly what needs to be done for that particular equipment. Now, the right way to do this is for the controls contractor to issue an RFI to the design team and have them confirm that whatever they plan on programming matches what the intent is. And when the RFI is issued and the contractor goes ahead and programs the controls sequence operation based on what the answer is, that answer may not be corresponded or may not be provided to the commissioning team. And so when they get to the job site and start performing functional testing, they don't realize that the actual sequence operation got changed. So their functional test is still based on what was originally specified. So as you can see, there are so many different parts where the breakdown could occur, and where you may end up with a wasted trip to the job site to conduct the functional testing, because what's installed at the end of the day doesn't meet what was specified originally by the engineer of record. So the commissioning engineer tries to get hold of the engineer of record, tries to make sure that whatever has been programmed meets the intent. And if the answer is received, that's great. If not, it's a wasted trip. So what we want to make sure is that functional testing procedure is reviewed by the entire team, by the engineer of record, by the controls contractor. We want to make sure that also major equipment gets pre-tested. And pre-testing equipment not only benefits the commissioning engineer, it also benefits the construction team because they don't have to waste their time. Now, let's look at how Facility Grid can address all these items as I just mentioned. So I'm going to switch to our cloud-based software, and let's look at one of the projects right here. So the first step was to synchronize the mobile with the cloud. So obviously, what we want you to make sure that every single device that you're planning on using on the job site has the app installed. So whether you're working on a iOS device or a Windows-based device, we want you to go to the App Store for your device, download Facility Grid, and install it, and then select the project that you're planning to work on in the field and synchronize it with your device. So basically, you can go to the projects page on your mobile device. You can select any project that you want. You can download it, or if it has already been downloaded, you want to synchronize it with the cloud before you get to the site. And again, as I mentioned before, any device you bringing with you, whether it's a Windows-based laptop, whether it's a smartphone, you want to make sure that the app is installed on every device you are planning on using, right? And so if you download multiple projects to your device, then when you get to the job site, you can simply select the project that you're working on currently and then use your device for it. The next item we talked about was making sure that you download the latest documents to your project. So as you know, in Facility Grid, you can download any type of document and associate it with any entity. You can associate a document with a task, with an issue, with a piece of equipment, with a system, and every single document that you download is going to result in the documents library, which is structured based on the type of the document that you download. When you download the document, you specify what type of a document it is, and Facility Grid automatically builds a structure, tree structure of the documents that you can access and have available or have handy when you are on a job site, when you synchronize your device with the cloud. The next item is enabling completion of multiple checklists. So Facility Grid provides you with functionality to complete multiple functional tests. And that functionality is default in Facility Grid. You don't need to do anything for it. When you get to the job site on your mobile device, you can select several tests and complete testing of several pieces of equipment on one screen. Now, in order for same functionality to be available for the checklists, what you need to do is you need to go to the settings section on your project, and under the advanced settings, just select the functionality to complete multiple checklists. And when you do that on your mobile device, you can simply select several tests. So if I go to checklists on my mobile device and I select multi-complete, and let's say I want to perform multi-completion of several checklists for DX equipment. So I'm going to filter my DX equipment. I'm going to select several pieces of equipment and then click on proceed. And the next page is going to display those pieces of equipment. So again, what we want to make sure that every piece of information, every step is documented. But we also want to make sure that the documentation process is simplified as much as possible. So when there's a question, has the manufacturer cut sheet been provided or not? This obviously, when we're doing this test, is that the manufacturer cut sheet has been provided for all DX equipment. So instead of opening individual checklist for every piece of equipment, we can simply answer yes to every single question. And similarly, if the answer is no, again, you don't need to do it equipment by equipment. Now, some of the questions that are applicable to individual assets, you can obviously reply to individually. You can also create individual notes or individual issues related to an individual instance of a piece of equipment. But again, if you feel comfortable with allowing your team, with allowing contractors to respond to several checklists at the same time, this is what the functionality is available. Now, the next step was to ensure that the PDF markups are done, and then those markups can be easily transferred to the issues logs and site observation reports. So again, as I mentioned before, when you go to the job site, you want to document an issue, and if documenting that issue requires documenting the location of the issue, the best way to do it is to mark it up on a PDF document. And what you're going to do is you're going to locate the document on your mobile device. You're going to open this device. Again, you're going to find the document under the documents folder. You're going to locate the document. Let's say it's MAP drawings. You're going to open the drawing in a third-party application installed on your mobile device, and you're going to mark it up. You can even attach pictures to the document. And then once you do that, what you do not want to do is to go back to the office and then download your markups and manually enter them into the issues log or site observation report. So what you're going to do is you're going to mark up your documents right here, and once you hit save, Facility Grid will automatically read all your markups, will grab all your pictures, and will create issues and observations from those markups. And in addition to that, it will also add the links you can see to those issues in Facility Grid, so that when a contractor is responding to your issues, they don't need to figure out exactly where that ripped insulation was or a missing ductwork support. They can clearly see, they can find that issue just by searching the PDF, and the link to the issue will be automatically added by Facility Grid to where the issue is. So again, it simplifies your life, simplifies the life of the contractor that is trying to respond to the issue, to address the issue, and make sure that the productivity is increased and efficiency is there. Now, the last item is pre-verification testing. Now, Facility Grid provides a functionality to create pre-verification tests automatically. Every time a commissioning provider creates a functional performance test, Facility Grid creates a copy, an identical copy of the same document as a pre-verification test. Now, this is done because Facility Grid is a permissions-based software, so that when functional performance tests are created in Facility Grid, those tests can be viewed by the entire team, but can only be responded by the commissioning engineer. At the same time, Facility Grid creates a copy of the same test as a pre-verification test called PVT. And basically, this is where the contractor, typically the controls contractor, has a chance to go in and respond and pre-test that piece of equipment. And most of the time, that pre-testing will serve as an ability to verify that the test procedure that the commissioning engineer has written matches what was programmed, okay? And if it doesn't match, it will identify those issues and will enable addressing those issues prior to the commissioning agents getting to the job site. So for example, if commissioning engineer created an FPT for an air handling unit, so then the contractor can just go in and respond to the FPT or pre-verification test for that equipment. So the contractor could just open that pre-verification test and respond to the questions. Now, I just picked a functional test for one of the air handling units. It doesn't look like this one has been responded to. I'm going to pick another one. Let's say it's for the air handling unit number 4. I'm going to scroll down, see if this one has been responded. And basically, again, the contractor would just go in and respond to these questions. Now, if there are any failed tests, the contractor has a possibility to enter the response as a failed, enter any notes, and basically these items get documented as a pre-verification testing. And when the commissioning engineer is looking to the same functional tests and getting ready to go to the job site to perform the functional testing for that equipment, they can look at any comments that have been documented by the controls contractor, for example. So if I open HU4 and I go through the questionnaire, I'm going to see whether anyone has responded to the pre-verification testing. It doesn't look like this pre-verification testing has been done for this piece of equipment. Let's look at HU3. So HU3 has, I believe it has some questions that have been responded by the contractor. But basically, it doesn't look like this FPT has been responded either. But basically, again, the goal is that if pre-verification testing has occurred, then any of the responses are registered and documented in this FPT. Huh. So it's interesting. So this is the case where it hasn't been done for any of the air handling units. I know that one of the equipment has definitely been pre-tested. So I'm going to look at an FPT for a VV box. And let's say this is the test. Looking at VV box 1-24. I know that that box definitely has been pre-tested. So I'm going back to my FPTs. I'm removing the filter. And I'm looking at this box VV1-24. Okay, so when I'm looking at this box, I know that the contractor has responded to the pre-verification of this test. Okay, so here are the responses. Here what the contractor has stated. So basically, these three questions have been recorded as passed, and right here, this particular question has been recorded as failed. And the comment that the contractor has provided was that this sequence of operation is not correct. So this one statement can make your trip to the job site to perform functional testing a waste of time. So what you want to do is make sure that you see this response prior to booking your trip, prior to getting to the job site. Because if this sequence of operation is not correct, if this is not provided, you want to make sure you understand why. Is it because it's been eliminated? Is it because the design documents were not correct? Is it because there was an RFI and there was an update to the sequence of operation? What you want to do is you want to resolve this, you want to address this, you want to get an understanding of what the correct sequence is, and you want to edit your functional test to match exactly what's supposed to be occurring with this particular piece of equipment. And you want this to happen before you go to the job site. So if you realize that the reason that this sequence operation is not correct is because the engineer didn't do something right, or the contractor didn't do something right, or it's simply because the commissioning engineer didn't look at the latest document. You want to fix this before going to the job site so that when you're there, you're actually testing and with an understanding that what the procedure you're using actually matches what was programmed by the contractor, what was intended by the engineer of record. So these are my 5 tips. Again, these are based on my experience. If you have any questions related to this presentation, I'm looking forward to answering them. There are a couple of questions here. First question is there a way to see a summary screen of the checklist issues? Yes. So Facility Grid is a task-based software. And what this means is that every single issue that is created in Facility Grid is related to a task. So if the task is pre-functional tests or checklists, that the task or those issues are named with the code that references that task that they're related to. So, for example, as you're looking at the issues log, you're seeing that these issues are all related to site observation report. Okay, so if I want to find all the issues that relate to FPTs, so all I need to do is filter the issues related to certain tests. And by the way, not only that you can see them, these issues on the screen, you can select all these issues and you create a report and issue to your team. So for example, you just spend the entire day testing a piece of equipment and you know that that particular FPT is as soon as you documented them, all you have to do is just filter those issues, select them all, and you can create a report. Or to make your life easier, you can just simply click on this envelope icon, and Facility Grid will automatically create a report, and you can send out that report to whoever you would like this report to be intended to. And next question is, we experienced that a few projects that installers think PVTs and FPTs should perform by CXA only. That's actually great questions. So pre-verification testing is something that should be encouraged by the commissioning agent from the beginning of the project. Now, there are two ways to perform pre-verification testing. One is to make sure that it is part of the scope of work for the installing contractor. How do you do this? Well, you simply include it in the general spec section for the commissioning services. Just add that line that the installing contractor has to perform a pre-verification testing for at least one instance of every major piece of equipment. Okay, so maybe there is no need to perform a pre-verification testing for a VAV box, but you definitely want to pre-test a chiller or a boiler. Okay, so if you simply include that language in a specification, that will get into the construction documents, and that will become a scope item or a line item for a contractor. Now, let's say you did not do that. So when you have your kickoff meeting with the contractors, you need to explain to the contractors why it is to their advantage to perform those tests. Again, as I mentioned before, there's not a single entity to blame for having functional tests not going as envisioned. It could be design engineers' fault. It could be contractors' fault. It could be the fault of the commissioning engineer not getting the latest documents and not basing the functional test on those latest documents. So what you want to do is you want to encourage your team to, number one, review the functional test, and number two, pre-test your equipment. Okay. And again, when the contractor pre-tests the equipment and identifies items that are written in that functional test and not matching what was programmed, that you want that to be resolved prior to the commissioning agent getting to the job site, opening that functional performance test, and saying, oh, well, it doesn't match what the design intent was. Because the next response from the controls contractor is, well, look, we've been doing this work for this client for many, many years. This is exactly how they want this boiler to be performing. Well, the commissioning engineer cannot accept this as a meaningful response. Why not? Because this still does not match the engineer's intent for operation. Okay, so it has to match it. Now, until the commissioning engineer acknowledges that the way system is performing matches the design intent, they can't walk away from the job site. Even they may be looking at the way the system is performing and saying, no, that's exactly right. That's how it should be programmed. But until it matches what the design intent is, okay, they can't just simply walk away and say that the system is functioning. So it is highly, highly recommended that pre-verification testing is performed, and it is to satisfy and to encourage pretty much every single party. And most importantly, controls contractor, because controls contractor is typically the last person on the job site, is typically the last person to be blamed for delays on the project. And look, most of the time it is not their fault. most of the time it is, again, there's either not the latest documents conveyed to the commissioning authority, the design is done poorly, not tailored to a specific project, and having the controls contractor actually going through your functional performance testing procedure and making sure that it is matching with what has been programmed. And if not, raising the concern, raising an issue and saying, look, what you specified in your functional testing procedure is not going to work. You will not get that response. And the reason is because whatever, we want to make sure that that has been addressed before commissioning engineer getting to the job site. And when that happens, when the commissioning engineer gets to the job site and the controls contractor, it feels great about what is going to be tested because he knows or she knows that the way that the commissioning engineer intends to perform the testing matches to what has been programmed. Everybody is happy, right? So commissioning engineer just goes through the testing, documents everything. Everybody feels good about themselves because they know that that the system function exactly as it's supposed to function. I think I got another question. So this question is the PDF markup only available for the mobile device or tablet application? When on site, I go back and forth between mobile device and the computer. That's a great question. So the functionality that Facility Grid provides in terms of the PDF markups, this is something that is unique to our commissioning software. So this is unique to be able to integrate any PDF markups with commissioning process, okay? And this functionality is available for any app on any mobile platform. So basically, whether you're using iOS, whether you're using Android device, or whether you're using a Windows-based device, you're able to download app related to your platform and use that app to mark up your documents. So if you are working on your laptop and it happens to be Windows-based laptop, all you want to do is just download a Windows-based app from the Windows App Store. And by the way, the demo session that I'm performing is on my Windows-based laptop. Okay, so all you can do is download this app on your laptop and use your laptop as a mobile device. Now, the reason you want to do it is because sometimes you're going to end up somewhere in the basement, somewhere in the mechanical room with a bad Wi-Fi connection or no Wi-Fi connection, and you want to make sure that when you're on a job site, you always work in a mobile app. And the reason is when you work in a mobile app, you will always retain all your data. You will never lose your data, right? So what happens when you're working on your laptop and all of a sudden you lose Wi-Fi connection? All the data that you've downloaded or you've recorded on your device is going to get lost. This is why Facility Grid provides you with ability to use our mobile app and document everything, every single step, every single functionality, and that data will always be retained. You will never lose that data. Okay, so we strongly encourage you, whether you use your mobile phone, whether you use your tablet, or whether you use your laptop, you are always on the mobile app on those devices. Okay, it looks like I do not have any more questions. Well, I thank everyone for attending today's webinar. If you have any additional questions regarding how to better do certain steps throughout commissioning process or design or construction administration, I'm always available at alex.kozinets@facilitygrid.com. Again, I'm thanking you for joining today's webinar, and I look forward to presenting to you in the future. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.